Welcome to the Social Hotelier Show, where we explain the human side of hospitality, the mindset, empathy, and leadership that elevate guest experience and inspire those who we serve. Today we step beyond the front desk into the realm of human behavior and mindset mastery. My guest is Blair Dunkley. He's an expert in cognitive alignment, founder of Rewiring the Mind, and author of the Phobia Freedom Formula and Ultimate Mind Hacking. Today we'll unpack how hoteliers can rewire their thinking, manage stress, and connect with guests, even in the most challenging moments, from decoding digital body language to calming upset travelers. This episode dives into the mental tools every hospitality professional should master. Welcome, Blair, and it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam. Really appreciate it.
So first, for our audience to get some background, can you tell me about a bit about your professional experience and why you founded at Rewiring the Mind?
Well, actually, funny thing, I started out in the hotel business, believe it or not, being a room service waiter, and actually started with the first department at the hotel I was at for room service. So it was fun, challenging, and very interesting. And I realized even then at a very early age how important people skills are in the hotel business. There's probably not a more important set of skills other than people skills. Well, maybe if you're a chef, there are other cooking is awfully important too. But still, as a chef, managing your team and making things happen is probably the top thing that you have to do. So mind models were natural. I created a school called Life Skills Colleges, where I started that and grew it to 23 campuses. And that was profound. We had over 1,000 students, and a lot of them with mental health issues. We had 80% of our student population were diagnosed as potentially suicidal. So one of the key things I found is the stuff that I did there and applied there had to work or somebody died. Now, there's lots of stuff, and I know we'll get into this more, but there's a lot of stuff out there called, like, referred to as mindset and getting a great mindset. And I'd like to challenge people out there who have this whole belief that, oh, I've got a great mindset. I had a great mindset too, until I went through a trauma. And my dad went into a coma while I was working at Life Skills, and he was actually in a coma for 14 years before he passed. So I had a lot of time and energy focused on how to keep myself mentally healthy, how to keep our coaches at the college healthy, our entire staff and workforce, and making sure that we were aligned to grow the business. And that was huge. So that's a little bit of the background for me.
Well, that is tremendous background that you have, and also that you went personally through a very traumatic experience, if I may say that. So
I have unfortunately been through numerous traumatic experiences like that, and I'll tell you that the mind models have saved my butt so many times it's not funny.
So could you explain a little bit what are mind models, just for primarily not only for the audience, but for me? This is a new...
Absolutely. So mind models are they use words. So I use naming and labeling, and they are models that you apply in your mind with simple names and labels, like effective versus ineffective. And usually it's one versus another. That's the structure. The reason that I structured it as a one word versus another word is it gives a compare and contrast. Now, we have two primary learning models, and the first one is going to be just simply you mimic like a baby. And the second one is compare and contrast. I won't go more into depth than that. There's lots more that I could talk on that. But mind models use that methodology of compare and contrast and create, literally thought structures that are identifiable, repeatable, and duplicatable to enable a person to literally manage their life through how they think, not what they think, but how they think. And it gives you tested thought structures, skills, and behaviors to be able to change, rewire your brain, literally.
So you had a chance to work in the hotel industry, and you had one of those very interesting jobs. Like I had the opportunity to be a room service waiter. So you meet all kinds of people through a time, and there are many stories we could share about that. But when you say that when you're teaching people rewire thinking, what mindset shifts are mostly urgently needed? As you see it from if you think about, you had some experience in the hospitality industry, and you see the people working in that industry now, what are the most urgently needed in today?
Well, it depends on where you are in the organization. If you're senior management and you just moved up into management, I would argue the mind model of confidence versus self-confidence is probably the biggest one that you need. You can fake it, but if you're just giving yourself positive affirmations and all of that kind of stuff, I hate to break it to you, but those don't work. So you can be as positive as you want every day, but you leave and you feel inside like you're somehow lying to yourself and putting on this mask, and you're fake and you're not real. And so authenticity of new managers is really important, to be able to go in there and learn and be able to be comfortable with making mistakes so that you can learn from them, as opposed to trying to be perfect.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do, because as a new manager, you want to prove to everyone that you know it all, and it's very difficult sometimes to accept the fact that the people who work for you, who in the organization, know much better the job than you do, and then you're supposed to lead them.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that's a very good point.
And you bring up, actually, in your language, you use the word accept, and that's another mind model that we have, is acceptance. And I mean, people bring up these mind models all the time. That's where I found them in successful people's language. They use the mind models and they don't even know that they're using them, just like you did.
That's interesting. Well, thank you for that. I'm picking up some new things here while we are speaking, so that's very nice. Another area of the hotel, because most of the people who listen, or majority of the people who are listening to this podcast, are people working in the industry. So they are trying to relate how that relates to their work. And one of the very critical areas is what we call the front desk, or the front desk staff. And having personal experience of dealing with all kinds of guests, how can a front desk staff recognize when a guest anger isn't about the problem, but about something deeper?
One of the key things that I teach people is a skill called the alignment process. And when a guest comes in and is barking and commanding and doing all of this stuff, one of the ways that I used to, and still do with different clients all over the place, is I ask permission. I ask, do you mind if I ask you a question? And I try and do it in a firm but neutral tone. It's got to be firm so it doesn't sound like I'm a pushover and just plow right through, but a firm but neutral tone. And they usually say yes. Now, at that moment, when they say yes, like, you're going to get a yes about 95% of the time. And that yes is going to give you an ability. When you say, do you mind if I ask you a question? They say yes. And you come back and say, Did you have a really tough journey getting here? Is what's going on for you? Or I'm not phrasing it quite perfectly, but I would say something to the effect of trying to be empathetic towards the guest and allow them to vent so that they can actually express their focused issue on the real issue, not at you necessarily, so that you've now pivoted them just away from attacking you in the hotel to literally coming in and saying what caused the state that they're in, because that state did not happen accidentally. It's there. It was created by a set of circumstances, and there's a mind model called self, other, and situation, SOS, self, other, situation. And when you take it on yourself, you're going to be losing self-confidence. You're going to probably start making mistakes at the front desk, and then it just pisses the person off more. But if you can separate self from the situation, in this case, the guest situation has got very little, if anything, to do with you. And that's the other, but their situation that they were in is coming forward and using that alignment process. Excuse me, do you mind if I ask you a problem or a question? And they say yes. And they say, and then you can just say, boy, I really understand that you've gone through something challenging. What's the issue that you faced getting here? What is the thing, or what caused, you the difficulty that you seem to be going through right now? Maybe I can help you with that.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
That's the whole process of how they are. And the SOS helps the front desk person, separate themselves from somebody else's problem instead of accepting the problem as theirs that they had nothing to do with.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what happens all the time. That you're if you learn how to ask that permission to ask a question, I think that's you can step back from a situation. You don't feel it's not about you, but you will actually help them too, and you can create a kind of a relationship in a way that with a person you didn't know from before. So that is a very, very interesting way that you are describing this. Mm-hmm. But then, then we have also, because of the online bookings, and we don't really know these people until they arrive. How can hotel professionals decode the digital body language to understand the tone and emotion in emails and that part, which is also something that is now for the last few generations, where we got the bookings of the guest booked themselves by telephone calls or somebody booked on behalf. But now it's a rather impersonal email, and now even more it's a third party who does a booking. But if you get faced with sort of how can you understand the language much better to decode the digital body language to understand the tone and emotion of the writer?
Well, one of the things that I try and do is keep the texting down to a explaining and sharing the critical points, not everything. And so when some people are structuring their digital interface, they want to put in everything. They overcompensate and give everything. Try and do it in a way that, if you can, let the guest know that if you would like more information on this, you can go here. Like if you want all of the amenities, go here. But if you have like 15 amenities, don't name and label all of that. Just lump them in a place separately so that the person can quickly and easily get to where they want to go. I've personally experienced it where I'm overwhelmed with checkboxes and information and pieces that they want to know. And I just about feel like, can I cope with, their digital collecting of every inch of information? And it's like they want information on my firstborn. They're overboard with the collecting of that information.
Yeah.
Chunk it into smaller bits. So you're not creating a barrier for people to move forward, because if the individual is self-checked in, they bring that attitude and that set of assumptions to the front desk when they do check in.
That's right. Now there's something that is I have also faced, but how can teams respectfully interact with neurodivergent guests and all college without assumptions or discomfort?
Well, one of the key things that I've worked with a lot of neurodivergent individuals, and I just, again, ask simpler questions like, can I help you? Are you clear on what needs to happen next? And when they go, are they tracking and following? Because a lot of the neurodivergent individuals have challenges. Like, I'm dyslexic, so that, sometimes I make mistakes and I reverse my numbers. So that's something I've lived with all my life. However, asking people or pointing out their mistake as a mistake, as opposed to seeking clarity from the guest, those are the types of things that I would do and acknowledge. Like, this is going way off topic, but there's a comedian name is Matt Rife, and he will engage audience members, and he goes out of the way to deal with people who are physically handicapped, like literally in wheelchairs. And he includes them in his comedy act, roasting them or doing things, engaging with them, and they love it. And so that is the sort of thing that I go, if you're being extra cautious around them, that doesn't feel like you're treating them as an equal.
Yeah.
So yes, you break down your questions, keep them slightly simpler. And Matt Rife does it very fluidly by keeping, like, just what is your name? Like, he starts off with just that simple piece of information, and it's crystal clear that he figures it out, and then he engages with that little piece of information and move forward. So take the chunks of information, make them a little smaller, and remember, the person that you're talking to is a human being. And so, like, it matters to them, and treat them with dignity and respect, and they respond in kind.
Very good, very good. When a guest mood spirals, what is the first mental reset a staff or hospitality professional should do before responding?
Well, one of the key things that you don't want to do is spiral out of control with the individual. That's about the worst thing that you can do. But acknowledging their situation, and frequently I've asked individuals, I'm not sure what you're trying to get across to me, but I really want to understand it. Can you help me understand the issue from your perspective? And 99% of people, that's what they want. They want to be understood from their point of view, not from yours. So that's the key, always.
Yeah, that you're on the same side, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You work with cross-cultural teams,
Yes.
I'm sure. And how can curiosity become a leadership tool in multinational hospitality environments?
It's absolutely essential. If you start checking into the customs, like right across the front desk, and you start engaging with questions that are maybe not got anything to do with booking them into the hotel. Find out where they're from. Find out, what they find interesting in their areas. Start being curious. Curiosity is the biggest thing that you can bring to the table, and just accepting where they are. That acceptance is so critical for people. They want to be understood and accepted. And when you can do that from the front desk or any place in the hotel, people will remember you. You've made an impact in them.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I mean, these days, I mean, even if you go as a hotel guest or you work in a different country, majority of the staff are not even from the country themselves. So they are people who have, in Europe, for instance, you find that hotel staff are coming from Asia, you have from Indian continent, you have from Africa. Yeah. And so I think it's very important also among the management to be sensitive to understand the culture they're coming from, and also be curious and guide them gently during that process of how to deal with the hotel environment. And then as a guest that you are facing, I think it's very interesting. I'm a very curious person, so I'm always interested to learn about what are the things that fascinates them if they're coming visiting Finland, for instance, or and how can I share with them some ideas what they can do, which is not in the local guidebook, and usually that's quite appreciated.
Usually is, all of these little things is, do you have plans, do you know where you're going next? Do you know how, what did you came to, in your case, Finland? Do you understand where to go? I would love that if somebody asked me, do I know that? And would you like one of my favorite spots? And you can make recommendations. And if you just do it again, would you like? That's seeking permission. Again, it's just another way of doing it.
Yeah. So, one thing that I noticed throughout my career, and I didn't really fully realize at the time that in the industry and also in the hotels that I worked in, that we are dealing with some mental health issues, and either whether it's relating to abuse or using alcohol or drugs and so on. Why is the mental health often the unspoken challenge behind service excellence, and how can then, as a leader, make it safe to talk about it?
Well, it's really, if you're in management, the number one thing is accepting this is something that's there. There's been global research done, and most countries fall into the same pattern that 50% of your people will experience some kind of serious mental health situation in their lifetime. And most of the workers that are in hotels are going through a lot right in that moment. As you said, a lot of them are from different countries. So now they're going with separation, with what's going on in their personal lives, how all that is working for them. Those connections and that understanding of the potential distress or concern that they're having, especially if it's a bad day. Do they have a habit of imbibing, having alcohol, either on premise, which generally is forbidden, or going out and doing it with friends that they develop at the hotel? And the one to worry about the most is the ones that go out there and do things privately, that don't have connections, don't have friends. And that, as a manager, I would want to know how my people are connecting into society beyond just the hotel. Do they have some kind of support circle? Are they connected at home? These are the kinds of questions I'd be looking to get. And again, curiosity and care and concern, and having true care about your people means that you're modeling how the front desk, especially, or anybody in the hotel, should be approaching the guest, because the guest has probably come from a place that was difficult and they now want to just sit back and relax. And some guests have a tough time decompressing on their vacation. And so pay attention to that and see if you can't just be that smile, that engagement. And one of the key things is you want to engage with a sense of possibility and hope. We never want to take hope away from people, ever. We never want to take the idea that this is going to be, they're hoping for a great vacation. You never want to be able to take that away, because hope is so critical for people in that environment. And so is that curiosity. And if you've got that little secret place that you could share of a great meal, a great place to go explore it, that is an amazing time that they could have. And you've now made their trip.
Very good. I want to ask you about alignment. What does it mean for a hotel team to achieve alignment, and how can mindset training drive measurable business results as a fact?
Well, mindset training, as you know, I'm not a fan of mindset. And that's the problem, is it generally doesn't get measurable results because it's belief-based and it's internal. And everybody starts, the mantra and the whole other thing of getting it down, it's the behaviors that count. And so the alignment needs to be based on the behaviors that people are doing, and so that people can align with what's being done, not what's being projected in their mind. And because people can say, well, I believe that I believe. And so what? You believe. What are you doing? Because it's your behaviors that count. The old saying, actions speak louder than words. It's because your actions need to align with your intention. And if you set up an intention, like what do you intend to have happen? And you pair that then next with behaviors. As a manager, you can evaluate the intention that the individual has with their behaviors, but then you have the evaluation. Are they more likely to get to the desired result? And by the way, this is another mind model. It's called the IBER, or IBER, intention, behavior, evaluation, result. And you can apply this to yourself. You can apply this to your staff. You can look at it in so many ways. And it creates, when you've got a team with the same basic intention, going for the same basic desired result, then the behaviors don't have to be identical, but they have to drive, their actions need to drive them towards reaching the team's desired result. And when you do that, just by being curious, and generally it's not by telling people, it's by asking questions and asking them, are you seeing yourself moving towards whatever that target is, whatever that desired result is? And I go, people call it goals. Unfortunately, goals have, in most cultures, in fact, almost all cultures, are not as powerful as results. Because results, you either get it or you don't. It's externally verifiable, where a goal is sort of like playing horseshoes and hand grenades. Close counts. Well, in the hotel business, you got to be extraordinarily close for it to count. Otherwise, it doesn't. Like if you're in a maid making a bed and you don't make it properly, you haven't made it properly. It's like that's the result you're going for. It's made the way that it's laid out in the manual. It either is made that way or it isn't made that way. That's a clear thing. So you go for the desired result. You know how things need to be done. And most hotels have got effective manuals that give this. Unfortunately, the managers don't perceive the manual as an opportunity for growth. They see it as rules to enforce. And I look at it as, what if that manual is a guideline for building a curiosity-based, questioning-based approach to see where their staff is moving towards that desired result that's laid out in the manual.
Very good. I mean, this is very, very well put, and I think this is something that for now the managers here listening to take note of. The purpose of the manual, basically, that it's
absolutely.
Yeah. So I have a few more questions here for particularly the managers listening today. What's the one belief about people or performers they must unlearn to thrive in the post artificial intelligence era of hospitality?
Well, for me, I would move that into a different framework. In my research on rewiring the mind and neuroscience, unlearning doesn't really take place. It was a very common way of saying that you have to unlearn, but actually unlearning doesn't, like I said, it doesn't really take place. What happens is we can suppress that, but suppression doesn't work well because it springs back at the most inopportune moments. But what works extraordinarily well is replacement behaviors. So if you, instead of focusing in on unlearning, what do I want to unlearn? It's what do I want to learn instead? What is a more effective behavior? And that is extraordinarily powerful. It's actually much faster of an approach because you're not trying to unlearn it and then learn something different. You just go after the thing that you want to do that's more effective. And I have, a small stack of 3 mind models, and I call it the 3 E's. And the first of the 3 E's is the concept of, the mind model, effective versus ineffective. Then the second one is external versus internal. And the third one is evaluation versus judgment. And the reason that it's called 3 E's because everything that you want is the first version of each of those mind models. And you have 3 things. So you want things that are effective, externally verifiable, and you want to evaluate. You don't want to judge. And when you do that, alignment, growth, learning takes place very naturally and remarkably quickly.
Now, you have explained many interesting ideas here. You have written books. Are these to be found in any of your books, or how should they reach out or find out more about what you've been speaking about today?
Well, there are elements of that in my book. So, the primary one would be likely the Ultimate Mind Hacking book here, and the follow-up to that, not exactly follow-up, is Phobia Freedom Formula. And if you're a manager and you're stuck in a spot where you can't grow, Phobia Freedom Formula is the book for you. So, because if you're suffering from self-sabotage or doing that sort of thing, and you're wanting to move up in the hotel, yet you just can't seem to do that, you've been passed over for a promotion, well, Phobia Freedom Formula maybe is the thing that you need to take a look at. But the 3 E's are described in both books, but the better book for that would be Ultimate Mind Hacking, or joining me on my free every Tuesday night. And I know it's in Europe, it doesn't work well because it's 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That gets a little awkward over in Europe, but it is on repeat. So you can go on YouTube and look for the Blair Dunkley Experience and start getting more information.
Excellent. Very good. So if you mentioned the YouTube channel and so on, and then also your company, but if people are interested to find out more about at Rewiring the Mind. How can they reach you, and how can they find out more about this?
Well, they can do it two ways. So they can go to blairdunkley.com, and that's got a place where I have the majority of my stuff I've done, and there are ways to get a hold of me, but my email address is simply blair@rewiringthemind.com.
Very good. Blair, it has been a very interesting conversation, and I learned so much about what you're doing. And so thank you very much for joining today, and thanks for all the fantastic insight.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for having me. I just want to make sure that is. And people out there, please give Sam-Erik a great rating, like a 5-star rating. He's doing an amazing job. Please, take a look at it. He's finding guests and giving you guys unique insights into how to shift yourselves in the hotel business. It's huge. It's huge. Well done.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Social Hotelier Show. Make sure to visit our website, the Social Hotelier Show, blueberry.net, where you can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Play, or via RSS, so you never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we appreciate a rating in Apple Podcast. Or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that will help us out too. Be sure to tune in for our next episode.